For those of you I haven't met, I'm Reverend Ben Jameson. I'm your associate minister here. And here at CSL, we focus on 7 core values that help to guide everything that we do. Those 7 are love, healing, oneness, abundance, spiritual growth, service, and diversity. Today we're focusing on spiritual growth. And as I've talked to friends of mine around the country and talked to people here, it seems like there's a lot up right now for many of us. Whether that's just general life stuff or the pressure cooker of the last year and a half of the pandemic, now that pressure is being released, all of those changes are bubbling to the surface, demanding our attention. Regardless of what it is, change, struggle, challenges can feel overwhelming at times. It can be so easy to focus just on the struggle, the challenge, the fear of the unknown, whatever it might be that's up in our experience. But what we know is that the things we focus on come more powerfully into our life. So rather than being stuck in focusing on the challenge, we can activate our core value of spiritual growth by asking, how can I grow through this as I go through it? What does this experience have for me? How can I extract from this something that will serve me for the rest of my life? Doing so will pull our attention away from the struggle and the challenge and put it on what is yearning to be birthed through us, so that we move more powerfully through the circumstances in our lives and gain the spiritual growth that will serve us for the rest of our lifetime. Friends, regardless of the challenges you're facing, the good news is that in a loving universe, you are never given more than you can handle. So you've got this, and your spiritual community's got you. Here's to your spiritual growth. Namaste.
I have stories to tell you today, real stories about real people. First, a story of healing, then one of ego, and finally, one of survival. Now, my husband, Aubrey, is one of 8 kids, but they all grew up in groups of comparable age. Aubrey and his brother, Harold, and his other brother, Winston, all grew up together, so they were just a few years apart, like 1 year apart. And when they were little boys, about 10, 11, or 12, they liked to terrorize the neighborhood as little boys do. Growing up in a small town in Texas, there's not a lot to do, so you got to figure out what to do yourself. And brothers being brothers, they created games of competition, pitting one against the other. So one day they found this big hill, right? And they decided they were going to race down it on their bikes. And the first one to get to the bottom of the hill wins. What do they win? Absolutely nothing. But they win. So off they go, each one riding their bike as fast as they can. Halfway down the hill, it looks like Harold is going to win, but all of a sudden his bike hits a rock, and he's thrown over the top of it, flying into the air, and when he lands, there's a big gash on his leg, and it starts bleeding profusely. So the boys know they're in trouble, and they also know to do what they were told to do should they get in trouble and their parents are at work. That is to go to Big Mama's house. That's what they called their grandmother. Well, Big Mama has what the family calls the gift. She's an old woman, a very old woman, a descendant of slaves herself with little education, but a woman of pure heart and a mountain of faith. So Aubrey and Winston are carrying their brother Harold to Big Mama's house, and by now, of course, he's crying out in pain. He's a little boy, and she greets him at the door. "What's up?" And she has them lay him on her sofa because now his pants are soaked with blood from the bleeding, right? No worries, this is the 70s, so all sofas were covered in plastic, right? Yes, so we could protect them forever. Yeah. So Aubrey and Winston are talking about how much trouble they're going to get in because they got into trouble and they did this, and Harold's crying out in pain, and Big Mama says, "Shh, hush. Let me pray." And silence enters the room. And she takes her white handkerchief, she lays it over the wound, she closes her eyes, and she prays. Not more than a minute later, she pulls the handkerchief away, and the wound is gone, and there's no blood. It is completely healed. Aubrey said, "If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I'd have never believed it was true." About 10 years ago, into my first year of ministry, like year number 10, a very bright young man shows up at CSL, an engineer by trade. And he was immediately drawn to our teaching because, as he said, it's very simple. You know, there's a creative intelligence at the helm of the universe whose only intention is to give itself away and express itself. So right away, this young man has the basic formula for science of mind. He immediately enrolls in the foundation class. A few weeks into it, he asks to meet with me privately for counseling. Now, because of minister-client confidence, I can't tell you what he came to me for, but let's just say it was a matter of the heart, something his overdeveloped left brain knew nothing about. So he comes into my office, he sits down and he says, look, I'm a smart guy, so you can dispense with the elementary lessons. I get it, my mind is creative. All I have to do is think about what I want, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you do sound like a smart young man, so let me ask you, out of all that can be known in the observable universe, of all that's knowable, including the mathematical formula that initiated the Big Bang 13 billion years ago, that spread time and space and matter throughout the cosmos, to all that can be known there and why our hearts long for love more than anything, of all that can be known in the infinitely expanding universe designed and sustained by a genius artist, you said you're really smart, so you tell me what portion of this knowledge you have. Would you say you have 10% of all that's knowable? And he said, no, I don't think so. And I said, what about 1%? Do you think you have 1% of all that's knowable in the universe? And he said, probably not even that. And I said, well, then let's begin our time together by realizing you don't know jack. You don't know jack. A male ego. Dude. Third story. At the Jewish Museum in Prague, there is a featured artist, and her name is Helga Hoskova-Weiss. Helga is now 92 years old, but when she was just 15, she and her entire family were shipped off to Auschwitz. She survived, obviously, but after the war, when she was released, she couldn't stop drawing and painting the nightmares that she experienced there that resided still in her mind. At a recent speakers event just a few years ago at the museum, Helga was introduced as a survivor of the Holocaust, which is not a word she likes. She doesn't like the word survivor. Helga's a wise, simple woman who probably would have painted beautiful things in her career as an artist had she not been trapped in a world at war. But for the rest of her life, from that time on, she was compelled to draw and paint what she saw in the death camps. Now, as a young woman, this troubled her, and she grew depressed, and she stopped painting for years because she didn't want to paint the horrors of the Holocaust. She didn't want to do it anymore, and yet she couldn't get herself to paint anything else. So after a dark time in her life, she finally came to peace with her past, and she decided that she would use the story of her childhood trauma and horror and create a new work of art called New Life in the Wreckage. She understood, perhaps as you do, that our greatest challenge in life is to accept what we've been given in life and find some way to rise above it. When she gave a lecture on her new work, a Rwandan in the audience said, how were you able, Helga, to escape survivor's guilt when all of your loved ones died and you didn't? And a Palestinian blurted out, how have you been able to leave the past behind you? And an African-American woman asked, how do I speak of slavery to my children without causing them pain and anger? And Helga said, there is not just one message from the Holocaust. It's in sharing our stories of loss and tragedy that we come closer together to be part of the greater human story. She said that is the message. There's an old Yiddish proverb that says, a burden shared is a burden halved. In telling our stories, we ease our burdens and we find meaning in them. Helga has shared her story all around the world and her art all around the world. She has friends now in Germany who are teachers. So she now speaks to German students, one of which asked her, should I be ashamed of being German because of the Nazis? And she told him, "You are not to blame for the past, but you are responsible for the future." You see, the stories of our lives are powerful. They change lives, they heal a planet, and that is why we have to share them. 7 billion people on the planet, 7 billion stories, each one unique and different. Some of them about great triumph, about miraculous healings like Big Mama. Some of them about how our ego gets in the way of us living well, like my young student. And some of us about survival, just like Helga. How to find a way to keep living when the pain of your past keeps trying to infect your future. So, what's your story? What's your story? And how has what you've been through in this life contributed to the woman you are today? What kind of man have you become as a result of your past? What has your story made you into, or maybe turned you into? A person of faith or a person who lives in fear? Rising, strong. That's our theme this month, and we're using Brene Brown's book of the month with the same title. And in that book, she says this: owning your story and loving ourselves through the process is the bravest thing we'll ever do. When we deny our stories and disengage from tough emotions, they don't go away. Instead, they own us. They define us. Maybe Helga knows this. And that's why she doesn't want to be labeled just a survivor. Maybe she doesn't want the story of her past to define her current situation, nor her future, or her identity for the rest of her life. Imagine if just one story from your life, one story from your past became the identifying marker for the rest of your life. And you became that person who did that thing. I don't like that. This is why I've created an alter ego for my ugly stories. My evil twin Skippy. Yes. It's not me, it's my evil twin Skippy. He's quite a lush. Quite a lush. If you see him out drinking tequila, you must not go near him, because he will tell you stories that cannot be told on a Sunday morning on a stage. Yes, the uncut version. It's not me, it's my evil twin. I have a friend in Kansas City who likes to go to the boats and the casinos to gamble. And he does this when he's bored, and he's bored quite a bit. And I can't tell you how many stories he's had of telling me his winnings. You know, last week he won $1,000. Last month he called and said, "Oh, I won $500. He always calls to brag about what he wins. And I wonder why he never calls to tell me when he loses. Why is that? Why doesn't he ever call and say, "Oh my God, I was completely unlucky last night, I lost $1,000. He never does that. Nobody ever does that. We're very selective about the stories we share with other people. We only want to tell the good ones, you know. Just look at all those shiny, happy people on social media. You know, everybody's living the dream on Instagram. You can tell. But what about when we're not living the dream? What about our stories of loss and pain? What do we do with them? Renee has something to say about that too. She says this: most of us were never taught how to hold discomfort, sit with it, or communicate it, only to discharge it or dump it or pretend that it's not happening. That was really big in my family. Pretend it didn't happen and just go on with your life. How do you think that's going to work out? Look, I'm just like my friend in Kansas City who goes to the boats, and I'm just like you. I want every day to be about winning. I want it all to be about bunnies and butterflies. I want to win at the casino every time, but that's not how life works. You're going to get hurt out there. You are. It's part of human life. Somebody's going to be really nasty to you. Someone's going to cheat you. Someone's going to betray you. And you're going to create a story around that. The only question is, will it be a story of triumph over odds? Or will it just be one more story of somebody who got hurt and never got over it? And then the story defines them. I chose carefully this morning the 3 stories that I shared with you because I think you can find yourself in these stories. Just like Big Mama, you have it within you to heal. Maybe you haven't used your power yet. Maybe it hasn't been activated by your mind, but you will. You have the gift too, just like she did. And like the man who was so arrogant enough to tell me how much he knows, there's times when you played the story of the know-it-all. I already know that, I know that, I know that. Just about every time you do, you're going to find yourself in trouble. And last but not least is Helga's story. Like Helga, we've all been through a lot. You don't have to be a Holocaust survivor to face your greatest fears. Maybe it's a medical diagnosis. Maybe it's loss of income or a job, a failed marriage. I don't know what it is. But whatever it is, at some point, we all of us come face to face with something that scares the hell out of us. And that is the real story. The human story of 7 billion people, all who have come to life to experience what it's like to be a spiritual being in a human body, in a human world, to be absolutely pure and perfect on the inside and completely flawed on the outside. This Saturday is Freedom Day. As Antonio said, some people call it Juneteenth, which falls on the 19th of every year. It's that date in 1865 when slavery was ended in the United States 2.5 years after Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. The story of prejudice against people of color is an American story. It's part of our past that constantly seeps into the present day. To pretend it doesn't exist is not a healing formula. We must do as Brené Brown suggests. We must sit with it. We must face that story. We must feel the discomfort of it and find a way together to heal our nation of its painful past. So I came here today to tell you to own all of the stories of your life, the good, the bad, and the ugly. To feel all of the feelings from the stories of your life, to feel the great, immense joy when you win and the horrible sorrow when you lose, to feel it all. Because you have to feel it to heal it. Take the wisdom to be gained from each one of those stories and then turn the page on that chapter of your life and start a new story. Because the ultimate truth is you are more than any story of your life. You're the story writer, director, producer, and the star. And you know what? Maybe it's time for a new script. Don't you think? Yeah. And so ends the lesson. This is the place that we come to each week, online or in person, to be reminded of the truth that all the stuff we go through, all the stories of our lives are just part of who we are. That there's something in us that is stronger than all of it, that can override it all, that can heal it all. And this is a time in our service where we go within to be present with that power that heals all things. Let's close our eyes.
I breathe out, I breathe in, I am still, I go within. When I quiet my mind, in the stillness I find. Spirit meets me there. Spirit meets me there.
There are times in life when the challenge before us seems insurmountable. When the thing we are forced to go through seems unjust. Why me? Why is this happening to me? And it's at those times when we question the power that creates and sustains all life in the universe. If it is really present, are you here with me? Can I depend on you? Will you heal me? Will you love me when I don't feel lovable? And this is why we go within, so that we can touch that presence that lives inside of us, that power that can rise up within us, because the answer is yes. I am here with you, through you, as you. Lean on me. We will rise up. Let's be still. Let's be completely still for the next 60 seconds. Feel its presence, hear its wisdom, know its worth. You might have forgotten, but I'll remind you. You have been designed, created, and sustained by a perfect life, an unconditional lover. The power that created the universe lives in you, and you have access to all of it right now. It can heal anything in a minute. Use it wisely, use it well, use it often. Because it's always there. And so it is.
I breathe out, I breathe in, I am still, I go within. When I quiet my mind, in the stillness I find. Spirit meets me there. Spirit meets me there.
We close our service as we always do with this affirmation. You get to take it with you, and it's written by our own Reverend Ben Jameson, and this is what it says. Say it with me. I am my story and am empowered to rewrite it. All right, let's know this together. I am not the role I play or one of the stories in my life. I am the creator of all the stories, the owner of them all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But what I know is this: the great story writer, the creator of the universe, has my back all the time. It lives inside of me as a power that is indestructible. It lives inside of its creation as a love that is eternal and unconditional. So no matter what the story is of my life, on the outside of my life, no matter how things look or what they appear to be, whether I'm good or bad or happy or sad, that power remains consistent, that love goes on eternally. I always have access to the thing that lifts me up out of the story and can create a new one. Because I am in the presence of the divine everywhere I go. I am surrounded and immersed in its love and its power. And for that, I am so grateful. I am so empowered now to move forward in this week, knowing the truth. And so it is. We'll see you again, those of you who are online, right here on our Facebook live stream at CSL, and for you in the room. I can't wait to see you next week. Have a happy week. Blessings.
Thank you for watching, and thanks for supporting CSL. If you'd like to know more about us, check us out on our website or social media. Blessings.